It was a quiet afternoon at the downtown restaurant, the kind of place where regulars came for comfort food and the staff knew most customers by name. The waitress, a young woman in her late 20s, was finishing up a particularly long morning shift. She moved with practiced ease, balancing trays, taking orders, and exchanging smiles with familiar faces. Life had not been easy for her. She was raising her younger siblings after their parents passed away, and every paycheck was stretched to its limit. Still, she carried herself with a quiet dignity, never letting her worries show on her face in front of the customers. On this particular day, the restaurant had an unusual guest. A man, sharply dressed and wearing sunglasses even indoors, walked in and took a seat at a corner table. There was something about him that drew attention without effort. People noticed his expensive watch, the subtle but unmistakable air of authority he carried. Yet he didn't make a show of it. He simply ordered a coffee and sat back, observing the restaurant with a calm, calculating gaze. The waitress noticed him right away. She approached with her usual polite smile and greeted him. He looked up, a slight smile crossing his face, and asked for a simple lunch, nothing extravagant. She took the order efficiently and returned to the kitchen to prepare it. Throughout the process, she felt a subtle curiosity about the man. There was a difference in the way he moved, the way he observed. It was as if he were measuring everything in the room, and she instinctively sensed he was not an ordinary customer. When she brought the food to his table, he surprised her. He placed a $5 bill on top of the tray and said, in a tone that was casual but deliberate, "Keep the change, and tell me what you would do if this was a test." The words caught her off guard. She paused for a moment, trying to understand if he was serious. A test? Why would someone hand her $5 and call it a test? But the way he looked at her, calmly waiting for her reaction, told her he was genuinely curious about her answer. She smiled politely and set the tray down. Then she spoke, her voice steady and clear. She explained that she didn't mind the extra money, but she believed that a tip was something earned, and she would never accept it as part of a test or trick. She would serve every customer with honesty and care, regardless of their wealth or status. She added, gently, that life had taught her the importance of integrity, and that was something money could never buy. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. He didn't interrupt or challenge her words. Instead, he listened, leaning back slightly, his eyes narrowing as if to take in every detail of her manner, every nuance of her speech. There was an intensity in the way he observed her, a quiet fascination that made her feel both nervous and strangely confident. She was aware of herself in that moment, aware of the fact that she was speaking from her heart and not from a place of fear or expectation. After a few moments, she excused herself to attend to other tables, and he nodded in acknowledgement. She continued her work, but she couldn't help glancing back at him from time to time. There was something unusual about his presence, something that made the ordinary restaurant feel like a stage and herself an important actor in a story she hadn't yet understood. Other customers came and went, some recognizing the man, others not. The waitress kept her composure, attending to every need with her usual care. Yet, in the back of her mind, she wondered about the purpose of the $5 challenge. Was it simply a whim of a wealthy man, or was there more to it? She decided not to overthink. She had learned over the years that life often presented tests, some small and some enormous, and the best approach was always honesty and kindness. As the afternoon went on, the man continued to watch quietly. Occasionally, he would make a note on a small pad, almost invisible beneath the table. The waitress served him water and refilled his coffee, each time maintaining the same polite and professional demeanor. She didn't know why, but she felt an unspoken connection in those small interactions, a sense that her actions were being observed not with judgment, but with a deeper curiosity. By the time the lunch rush slowed, the man had finished his meal. He signaled for her attention and handed her a card along with a small envelope containing a tip that was far more generous than the original $5. She looked at him, startled, unsure how to react. He smiled and said, "Consider this not just a tip, but a recognition of honesty. Keep living your life the way you do. It's rare." She thanked him, her heart racing, not because of the money but because of the acknowledgement, the validation of her values. As she walked back to the kitchen, she felt a mixture of relief and curiosity. Something about this encounter felt monumental, though she couldn't yet put her finger on why. She returned to her other customers, but the memory of the man and his words lingered in her mind. Later that evening, as she closed up the restaurant, she replayed the entire encounter in her mind. The way he had watched her, the subtle challenge in his eyes, and the unexpected kindness at the end. She realized that life had a way of testing people, sometimes in the most ordinary places, and sometimes the smallest actions, like speaking the truth or serving with integrity, could leave a mark far beyond what anyone could imagine. The waitress didn't know it at the time, but this simple act of honesty would become the first step in a series of events that would change her life forever. A billionaire had noticed her character, and that observation, born out of a brief interaction over a $5 test, was about to set in motion a story that neither of them could have predicted. It was a reminder that courage and integrity often appear in the quietest moments, and their impact can be far-reaching, touching lives in ways that money alone never could. The next morning, the waitress arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. She needed to prepare for the busy day ahead, but her mind was still on the man from yesterday. She couldn't shake the memory of his eyes, calm yet full of curiosity, and the way he had listened to her without judgment. It had been more than just a simple interaction. It had felt like a recognition of who she truly was. She worked quickly, arranging tables and checking the kitchen supplies, all while replaying the moment in her mind. Other staff members noticed her distracted look, but she brushed it off with a polite smile. She told herself it was just another day at work, yet deep inside, a feeling of anticipation lingered. Something told her that yesterday was only the beginning. Around mid-morning, the man returned. This time, he was accompanied by an assistant, and his presence seemed to command the room without needing to speak. He didn't draw attention to himself, but the way he moved, the quiet confidence, made it clear he was someone important. The waitress took a deep breath, steadying herself before approaching his table. He greeted her with the same calm smile and asked her to sit for a moment. She was surprised but obliged, curious about what he wanted. He didn't start with small talk. Instead, he asked her about her life, her responsibilities, and the challenges she faced. She answered honestly, sharing stories of her siblings, the difficulties of managing bills, and the pride she felt in keeping her family together. Her voice didn't waver, though she felt a mix of nervousness and hope. The man listened intently, occasionally nodding or making small notes on a pad. There was no judgment in his expression, only genuine interest. For someone so wealthy and powerful, it was unusual to see this level of attentiveness. Most people she had encountered in her life seemed to value wealth and status above all else. But here was a man who seemed to care about her character, her values, and the way she approached life. After she finished speaking, he leaned back and smiled. He told her that honesty and kindness were rare qualities, and that he admired her courage to stay true to herself despite the difficulties she faced. He explained that many people, when presented with an easy way to gain advantage or wealth, would take it without a second thought. But she had proven that she valued integrity over money, a lesson that many people, even those with great wealth, often forgot. The waitress felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride and humility. She hadn't expected such recognition, and it moved her deeply. She had always believed in doing the right thing not for rewards, but because it was the right thing to do. Yet, hearing someone of such influence acknowledge her choices made her realize that her actions mattered, sometimes in ways she could never have imagined. The man then shifted the conversation to her dreams. He asked what she wanted for herself and her siblings, beyond the daily struggles and responsibilities. She spoke about her wish for stability, education for her siblings, and the chance to make a better life. Her words were simple, honest, and heartfelt. She didn't ask for money or favors. She just shared her hopes and ambitions as one human being speaking to another. He listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he said that she had a rare combination of resilience and morality, and that people like her were worth noticing. Then he leaned closer and asked a question that caught her off guard. "If I offered you a chance to change your life, would you take it without hesitation?" She paused, not fully understanding what he meant. She looked into his eyes and realized he wasn't speaking about money alone, but opportunity, mentorship, and trust. She nodded, explaining that anyone would welcome a chance to improve their life, but that she also knew the importance of effort and personal responsibility. She wasn't looking for handouts. She wanted guidance and a fair chance to succeed. The man smiled, a rare and genuine smile that seemed to light up his features. He stood, signaling that the conversation was concluding for now, but told her that he wanted to observe her further, to understand how she carried herself under pressure and how she treated those around her. She didn't know it, but this was the true test, far more significant than the $5 tip from yesterday. Throughout the day, she continued her work as usual. She served tables, managed orders, and helped the kitchen staff wherever needed. Yet, there was a subtle shift in her confidence. She felt seen in a way she never had before, not for her appearance, not for her charm, but for her character. Even when she didn't realize it, the man's presence was a quiet reminder that integrity could be recognized and valued, even in a world often dominated by wealth and power. Other customers came and went, some chatting casually, others returning to their routines. She kept herself focused on her work but carried a sense of pride and responsibility. Every interaction mattered, every smile, every polite word, every effort to do her best. She understood that these small acts reflected who she was, and they were now part of a larger story unfolding in ways she couldn't yet see. As the lunch hour drew to a close, the man signaled for her attention once more. He complimented her on her efficiency and the way she handled the busy shift. Then he asked her to join him for a brief walk outside, to speak more freely. She agreed, curious and cautiously optimistic. Outside, the city buzzed around them, but there was a quiet corner where they could speak without distractions. He asked more questions, delving into her personal philosophy, her motivations, and the lessons she had learned from hardship. She answered honestly, her words flowing naturally, revealing both vulnerability and strength. He nodded with each answer, clearly impressed by her wisdom and composure. He told her that he often met people who were polite and hardworking, but few who combined these traits with a genuine sense of moral integrity. Most were willing to bend their values for personal gain, yet she had remained steadfast. This observation struck her deeply. She had never considered that her everyday choices, her small acts of honesty and care, could be noticed by someone so influential. Before parting ways, he handed her a small notebook. He told her to write down her goals, dreams, and plans, and assured her that he would be following her journey with interest. It wasn't a promise of immediate wealth or opportunity, but a signal that her actions had meaning, that someone was invested in her story. She felt a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and determination. She knew that the road ahead would still be challenging, but now she had a sense of purpose that extended beyond her own struggles. Returning to the restaurant, she resumed her duties with renewed energy. Her co-workers noticed the slight change in her demeanor, a quiet confidence and focus that seemed to radiate from within. She smiled at customers with the same warmth, served meals with the same efficiency, but there was an added depth to her interactions. Every gesture, every word, carried the weight of someone who understood that character could shape destiny. As the day ended and she prepared to leave, she reflected on the events of the morning. The encounter had started with a simple $5 challenge, but it had opened a door to something far greater. She realized that life often tests people in unexpected ways, and that how one responds to these tests can create ripple effects beyond imagination. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt ready, empowered by the recognition of her values and the chance to continue living with integrity. Walking home, she thought about her siblings and the lessons she wanted to teach them about honesty, courage, and hard work. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the choices she made every day mattered not only to her family, but potentially to others she had yet to meet. And somewhere, in the quiet observation of a man she barely knew, she understood that true recognition doesn't come from money or status, but from being seen and valued for who you truly are. That realization stayed with her, a guiding light for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. Days turned into weeks, and the waitress continued her routine at the restaurant. Her life was filled with the usual responsibilities: serving tables, managing orders, and helping her siblings with homework. Yet, even in the midst of the familiar rhythm, the memory of the billionaire lingered. His words, his attention, and his quiet observation had left a lasting impression. She found herself reflecting on what he had said about integrity, courage, and the choices people make when no one is watching. One afternoon, as she prepared for the lunch rush, the man returned once again. This time, he didn't come alone. His assistant carried a folder filled with papers and a small box that seemed out of place in the restaurant setting. He waved at her from across the room, and she approached, careful to maintain her calm and professional demeanor. He gestured for her to sit, and she obliged, curiosity sparking in her eyes. He began by asking about her week, not just about work, but about her family, her dreams, and the small victories and setbacks she had experienced. She shared stories of her siblings' accomplishments at school, the little victories she celebrated quietly at home, and the small obstacles she faced in making ends meet. She spoke with honesty, each word reflecting the strength and resilience that had carried her through life. The billionaire listened with the same intensity as before, occasionally jotting down notes in a small notebook. There was a calmness in his presence, but underneath it was a sharp mind analyzing, understanding, and appreciating the depth of her character. He didn't interrupt or judge. He simply listened and absorbed the essence of her words. The waitress felt seen, not for superficial qualities, but for her true self, the combination of strength, humility, and integrity that defined her. After a pause, he asked her a question that made her think deeply. If someone offered you the chance to change your life completely, would you take it knowing it might come with challenges you haven't faced before? She considered this carefully, recognizing that life-changing opportunities often demanded courage, adaptability, and unwavering honesty. She nodded and explained that she would accept the opportunity, but only with the understanding that hard work and integrity would always be her guide. She didn't seek shortcuts or favors. She valued the principle of effort and the satisfaction of earning one's own success. The man smiled, a rare expression of approval, and handed her the small box. Inside was a simple, elegant watch and a note. The note read, "This is a symbol of time well spent and choices well made. Let it remind you that every decision matters." She looked up, stunned by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. It wasn't a gift meant to impress or display wealth. It was a reminder, a token of recognition for the decisions she made each day, often unnoticed by the world. He then leaned back and explained that he often met people who were ambitious or hardworking, but few who combined these traits with moral integrity and empathy. Most were focused on personal gain, but she had shown that character mattered more than wealth or status. This realization struck her deeply, reinforcing her belief that life's true rewards were not measured in money, but in the respect and trust earned from others. The billionaire continued, telling her that he had been observing how she interacted with everyone around her. Not just him, but her co-workers, other staff, and customers. He had noticed the way she treated people with kindness and fairness, even when it required patience or extra effort. She realized in that moment that every small action she had taken, from offering a smile to a struggling customer to helping a colleague with a difficult task, had been noticed and valued. It was a powerful reminder that integrity and empathy leave an impact far beyond immediate perception. As the conversation progressed, he asked her to think about her long-term goals and the legacy she wanted to create for herself and her siblings. She shared her dream of giving her family stability, ensuring her siblings received a good education, and one day being able to help others in their community. Her words were filled with hope and determination, yet grounded in realism. She didn't wish for extravagance, only the means to create a life that reflected her values and aspirations. He listened attentively, then shared his own reflections. He admitted that throughout his life, he had focused on wealth and influence, often overlooking the people around him and the values that truly mattered. Meeting her had been a reminder that character and integrity were far more important than any fortune or title. He wanted to do something meaningful not just for her, but as a reflection of his own desire to make a positive impact on the world. The conversation shifted to practical matters. He explained that he wanted to provide opportunities for her and her family, not as charity, but as a partnership built on trust, responsibility, and shared values. She listened carefully, understanding that this was not an offer of instant wealth, but an invitation to grow, learn, and create a future through diligence, honesty, and perseverance. Throughout the discussion, the waitress felt a mixture of emotions: gratitude, humility, and cautious optimism. She understood the significance of this moment, yet she remained grounded. She was aware that opportunities, no matter how generous, required effort, wisdom, and ethical choices. She expressed her gratitude sincerely, emphasizing that her primary goal was to uphold her principles while striving to improve her life and the lives of those she cared for. The billionaire nodded, clearly impressed by her perspective. He explained that he would be observing her journey, offering guidance and support when appropriate, but leaving the hard work and decisions in her hands. This approach reflected his belief in empowering people rather than handing them everything. It was a rare form of mentorship, one that combined respect, trust, and the expectation of responsibility. As the visit concluded, he handed her the folder he had brought. Inside were documents outlining potential opportunities for education, training, and career development. It wasn't an immediate windfall, but a roadmap for growth. The message was clear. This was a chance to build a life on her terms, with support, but without shortcuts. She felt a sense of purpose and direction, knowing that her choices in the coming months would shape the future in tangible ways. After he left, the waitress returned to her duties with a renewed focus. Each task, each interaction carried more weight. She was no longer just working to make ends meet. She was consciously building a path forward, guided by principles that had been validated by someone she deeply respected. Her colleagues noticed a subtle change in her demeanor, a quiet confidence and a thoughtful approach to every decision. Customers continued to receive her warmth and attention, but there was now a sense of deeper purpose behind her actions. In the following days, she began using the notebook and folder the billionaire had provided. She wrote down goals, short-term tasks, and long-term aspirations. Each entry was carefully considered, reflecting her values, responsibilities, and the potential opportunities ahead. She shared some of these plans with her siblings, encouraging them to pursue their own dreams with the same integrity and determination. The simple act of writing down her intentions created a sense of accountability and clarity she had never experienced before. As the weeks passed, the relationship between the waitress and the billionaire remained subtle yet profound. He continued to observe from a distance, occasionally providing guidance and encouragement, never imposing, but always offering insight. She felt a sense of trust and respect growing, understanding that this connection was built on mutual recognition of character and responsibility. It was a partnership of values, not wealth, and it transformed the way she viewed her own life and potential. Through this ongoing interaction, the waitress began to see the impact of her actions more clearly. Her integrity, kindness, and perseverance were not just personal qualities. They were forces that could influence others, create opportunities, and inspire change. She realized that every choice, no matter how small, had significance and that living with honesty and purpose could open doors in ways she had never imagined. By the end of part 3, the waitress had grown in confidence, clarity, and determination. The $5 test that had started it all had evolved into a profound journey of recognition, opportunity, and personal growth. She understood that the future was still uncertain, but with integrity as her guide and the billionaire's quiet mentorship, she was prepared to face challenges, embrace opportunities, and shape a life that reflected her values and aspirations. Months passed since the first encounter with the billionaire, and the waitress's life began to change in subtle but meaningful ways. She continued her work at the restaurant, balancing long shifts and her responsibilities at home, but there was a new sense of purpose in her daily routine. Each task was no longer just about surviving. It was about building a future she had begun to envision with clarity and determination. One afternoon, as she managed the lunch rush, she noticed a familiar presence entering the restaurant. It was the billionaire, alone this time, moving with the same quiet confidence that had always caught attention. He waved at her, and she approached with a polite but curious smile. He asked if she could spare a few minutes to talk in a quieter corner, and she agreed, sensing that this conversation would be important. Once they were seated, he began by acknowledging her growth. He mentioned the dedication he had observed in her over the past months, the way she had managed challenges at work, cared for her siblings, and pursued opportunities to learn and improve. He noted her maturity, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to honesty and fairness. It was clear that he had been watching closely, not with judgment, but with a genuine interest in her character. The waitress listened quietly, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. She had never expected her daily efforts to be noticed by someone of such influence, yet she realized that the values she had held onto, integrity, empathy, and perseverance, were making a difference. She shared her own reflections, talking about how she had begun to see the impact of her choices, and how she wanted to continue guiding her siblings with the same principles. He leaned forward, his expression serious yet encouraging. He told her that he had been thinking about the long-term impact of wealth and power, not just for himself, but for the people he chose to support. He had realized that money alone could not create lasting change. It was the combination of opportunity, guidance, and personal effort that truly shaped lives. He wanted to involve her in a project that reflected these values, a chance to make a meaningful difference, not just for her own family, but for others in the community. The waitress's eyes widened with curiosity and cautious excitement. She asked for details, wanting to understand the scope and expectations of this opportunity. He explained that he had been setting aside resources to support individuals who demonstrated integrity, resilience, and the willingness to grow. He saw those qualities in her and wanted to offer her a role that involved mentoring, organizing community initiatives, and helping others access education and training. It was an unusual proposition, but one that aligned perfectly with her values and aspirations. She took a moment to consider the responsibility. The opportunity was significant, and she understood that it would require dedication, honesty, and careful decision-making. Yet, she felt a deep sense of alignment with her principles. This wasn't about taking shortcuts or relying solely on wealth. It was about creating positive change through effort, guidance, and moral integrity. She accepted the challenge, grateful for the trust placed in her, and determined to prove that she was worthy of it. Over the following weeks, the billionaire provided guidance and support, helping her navigate the responsibilities of the new role. She began working on small initiatives in her community, organizing educational workshops, and assisting families in need. Her experience at the restaurant, managing people, solving problems, and maintaining composure under pressure, proved invaluable. She approached each task with the same honesty and dedication that had first caught the billionaire's attention. As she grew more confident, she also noticed changes within herself. She became more organized, thoughtful, and proactive. She learned to communicate effectively, manage resources wisely, and make decisions that balance compassion with practicality. The challenges were real and demanding, but she embraced them, knowing that her integrity and effort would guide her through. She also continued to care for her siblings, ensuring that they felt supported and inspired by her example. The billionaire occasionally visited, not to oversee her work in a controlling way, but to offer advice and encouragement. He asked thoughtful questions, challenged her assumptions, and provided insights drawn from his own experiences. She appreciated his mentorship, recognizing that his support was based on respect and trust, not authority or coercion. Their interactions reinforced the importance of character, perseverance, and ethical decision-making in achieving meaningful results. One day, while discussing the progress of a new community project, he asked her to reflect on the lessons she had learned since their first encounter. She spoke about the importance of honesty, patience, and empathy. She mentioned how she had learned to see potential in others, to trust people's intentions, and to lead by example rather than by authority. Her words impressed him, highlighting how much she had grown in a short period of time. He smiled and shared that her journey had also affected him. Observing her had reminded him of the value of character and the power of influence used responsibly. He admitted that she had inspired him to consider the legacy he wanted to leave, not just through wealth, but through the lives he touched and the opportunities he helped create. This acknowledgement moved her deeply, reinforcing her belief that personal growth and positive impact were intertwined. The waitress continued to take on more responsibilities, gradually expanding her influence in the community. She coordinated workshops, mentored young adults, and helped families navigate educational and financial challenges. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her confidence and sense of purpose. She realized that her actions were creating ripples of change, impacting lives in ways that went beyond immediate recognition. At the restaurant, her colleagues and customers began to notice a transformation as well. She carried herself with a quiet authority, balanced with warmth and approachability. People respected her for her dedication and integrity, and many sought her advice or assistance. She had become a role model, not through status or wealth, but through her consistent actions and the values she demonstrated every day. Through all of this, she never lost sight of her personal responsibilities. She continued to care for her siblings, ensuring they felt loved, supported, and inspired. She encouraged them to pursue their dreams and instilled in them the same principles that guided her own life: honesty, perseverance, and empathy. She understood that true success was measured not only by personal achievements, but by the positive impact one could have on others. By the end of Part 4, the waitress had transformed from a hardworking employee struggling to make ends meet into a confident, empowered individual making a meaningful difference. The billionaire's initial $5 challenge had evolved into a profound journey of recognition, mentorship, and personal growth. She had proven that integrity, perseverance, and compassion could open doors, create opportunities, and inspire change. Her life was no longer defined solely by circumstances, but by choices, values, and the positive influence she was creating in the world. Each step forward was a testament to the power of character, and the story of her journey continued to unfold in ways that promised hope, purpose, and lasting impact. Time passed, and the waitress's life had changed in ways she had never imagined. What began as a simple interaction over a $5 tip had blossomed into a journey of growth, opportunity, and influence. She continued working at the restaurant, but her perspective had shifted. Each day was no longer just about earning money or fulfilling obligations. It was about living with purpose, making thoughtful choices, and inspiring those around her. Her community work had expanded significantly. She now organized workshops, mentoring sessions, and educational programs for young people who, like her once, were struggling to find guidance and opportunity. She helped families navigate challenges with compassion and wisdom, always emphasizing integrity and effort over shortcuts or easy gains. People began to recognize her not just as a hardworking woman, but as someone who genuinely cared and could create meaningful change. The billionaire remained involved in her journey, but his role had evolved. He no longer needed to observe her closely. Her character, diligence, and empathy were already proven. Instead, he acted as a guide and advisor, offering occasional insights and encouragement while allowing her to make her own decisions. Their interactions were marked by mutual respect, a rare connection between two people from very different worlds, brought together by honesty and shared values. One day, he invited her to his office, a place she had only glimpsed before. She entered with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. He gestured for her to sit and began speaking in a tone that was serious yet warm. He told her that he had been reflecting on the people in his life and the legacy he wanted to leave behind. Meeting her had been a turning point, showing him the value of integrity, humility, and moral courage. He explained that he wanted to make a formal change to his will, ensuring that her family and the initiatives she cared about would be supported for years to come. The waitress listened, stunned. She had never expected such generosity or recognition. She felt a surge of emotions: gratitude, disbelief, and humility. She knew that this gesture was more than financial. It was a profound acknowledgement of her character, and the choices she had made over the years. She spoke carefully, expressing her gratitude, while emphasizing that she would continue her work with the same integrity and dedication that had guided her from the beginning. He smiled and reassured her that he had no doubts about her ability to handle responsibility. He explained that the decision to revise his will was not just about wealth, but about trust, respect, and the belief that people of integrity could create meaningful change in the world. She realized in that moment that her journey had come full circle, from a simple act of honesty with a $5 tip to a life-altering recognition of her character and potential. After that meeting, she returned to her daily routine with renewed energy and focus. Every interaction she had, whether at the restaurant or in her community work, carried a sense of purpose and direction. She became a source of inspiration for her siblings, co-workers, and the young people she mentored. They saw that dedication, honesty, and compassion could lead to opportunities and recognition that money alone could not buy. The community noticed the impact of her work. Families she had helped began to share their stories, creating a ripple effect of positivity and hope. Young people who had attended her workshops now pursued education and career goals with confidence and determination. Her influence extended far beyond the restaurant, touching lives in ways that were both tangible and deeply meaningful. She had become a living example of how character, perseverance, and empathy could transform not just one life, but many. Despite the recognition and opportunities, she remained grounded. She continued to work at the restaurant, understanding the value of staying connected to her roots and maintaining humility. She never let her success change her approach to people or life. She treated everyone with the same respect and kindness, regardless of their status or background. Her journey had taught her that true success was not measured in wealth or accolades, but in the positive difference one could make in the lives of others. The billionaire occasionally visited, not to control or dictate, but to celebrate achievements, offer guidance, and encourage continued growth. Their relationship was built on trust, mutual respect, and shared values. He often remarked that she had reminded him of the importance of seeing people for who they truly were, beyond wealth, status, or outward appearances. She, in turn, learned from his insights, gaining a broader understanding of leadership, responsibility, and influence. One evening, after a particularly successful community event, she sat down with her siblings to reflect on the journey they had shared. They spoke about the challenges they had faced, the lessons they had learned, and the values that had guided them. She emphasized the importance of honesty, perseverance, and empathy, sharing how these principles had opened doors and created opportunities that money alone could never provide. Her siblings listened attentively, inspired by her words and the example she set. As the months continued, she continued to balance work, community initiatives, and family responsibilities with grace and determination. Her life was busy, demanding, and at times challenging, but she embraced each moment with purpose. She understood that every decision mattered and that living with integrity and compassion created a foundation for lasting success and fulfillment. Eventually, news of the billionaire's revised will became known in the community. People were astonished by the gesture, recognizing not just the financial support but the trust and recognition placed in someone who had demonstrated true character. The waitress became a symbol of what integrity, perseverance, and empathy could achieve, inspiring countless others to pursue their goals with honesty and dedication. Through it all, she never lost sight of the simple beginnings, the quiet moment at the restaurant, the $5 tip, and the decision to respond with honesty and integrity. That small act had set in motion a chain of events that transformed her life, the lives of her siblings, and the community around her. It was a reminder that even the smallest choices, made with care and honesty, could have profound and lasting consequences. By the end of her journey, the waitress had become a person of influence, respect, and purpose. Her life was no longer defined solely by hardship or circumstance, but by choices, values, and the positive impact she created every day. The billionaire's recognition had opened doors, but it was her character, perseverance, and compassion that had guided her through them. She had proven that true success is not measured by wealth or status, but by the difference one can make in the lives of others. Her story became a testament to the power of integrity, the importance of empathy, and the impact of making choices guided by moral courage. What started as a simple test with a $5 tip had become a journey of personal growth, mentorship, and lasting change. She had transformed her life and the lives of those around her, leaving a legacy of hope, purpose, and inspiration that would endure for years to come.